Hi, it's been a while, hasn't it? I sort of missed my deadline. But I have an excuse, so it's okay. My microphone broke. And then I procrastinated for 3 months. So, the audio change is a bit of the ways in. Okay!
Alright, let's do this. If you have seen part 1, no need to recap, and if you haven't seen part 1, go watch it first. I'm not sure why you're here. After I finish showing off all my tools, I'm gonna pick up right where I left off. I was actually recording all of this on the same day I ended the last one, so yeah. Continuity, yippee! Right, my supplies. I got a black off-brand Sharpie, a real metallic Sharpie that I later switch out for a white pen, and a 3D printing Tyranid props, because Warhammer. With the patterns I taped in part 1, I start tracing. For now, I'm only tracing the gray parts of the fur that will be shaved down. I'm making sure everything flows with the direction of the fur, standard furry stuff. One thing I do, because my pattern is symmetrical, is obviously I have to mark which side is left and which side is right. But I always get my left and rights mixed up, so I cut it out as square and triangle. As long as you're consistent, it really doesn't matter. I shave all the fur down to like half a centimeter at the thickest. For personal protection, I have a box fan facing away with an air filter over it to catch any loose fibers. I also have a simple respirator and goggles. You might notice that while the goggles are on my head, they're not on properly. This is because I am not very smart. And also they were too distracting, so get comfortable, goggles. Having fur in your eyes is horrible. Once everything is shaved, I cut out the pattern pieces. I use the scissors when I need to be very precise, but for most of this I am using my box cutter. That way I only cut the fur backing and none of the actual fur. When I traced the patterns, I didn't add any seam allowance, and this is because I don't use it, at least for hand sewing. When I machine sew, I do use seam allowance, about 1 inch to half an inch, but I don't draw it then either. Instead, I eyeball the amount of seam allowance I need and then just cut around the lines I've made. I pin it together with my clips. Whoever remembers what they're called will get a smiley face in the comments. Woo! I stitch all my pieces together using a blanket stitch. Or a whip stitch if I forget I'm supposed to be doing a blanket stitch.
And that's all I got before my microphone exploded. So this is me continuing several months later, like 3. It's been a while. The smaller pieces I slot in basically like puzzle pieces, and I just clip on and then sew around it. I don't record everything so you'll see it jump, but I pin it to my foam head using just some regular pins just to make sure everything's fitting properly. And you can see here it mostly does. I make sure to use very brightly colored pins, that way I can see them all and don't accidentally leave any in the head and then stab myself in the face. These pieces here were already shaved down, but I want to shave it down further to get a much cleaner look. I also go in and gently shave the side edges to get rid of any just overhanging fur that will get in the way of my hand sewing, and you need to do that if you shave after you cut. Then it's back to the hand sewing, which is the majority of this project. When lining stuff up, I just have points where I know stuff line up, like corners and such. And if something's symmetrical, that does make it easier. I'm using a nylon thread here instead of a cotton because it's a bit stronger, but the knots have trouble sticking, so you'll see me hot gluing the knots. I just put a tiny blob there, but it makes sure nothing will fall apart. I also take plenty of time to text my friends because I love them. You might notice that the needle I'm using is curved, and that is very intentional. They're usually called upholstery needles, though I'm sure there's some other names for it. They help when getting into tight spaces like with these tiny parts, but the real help is you can get a much better grip on upholstery needles. When working with fur, especially if it's a bit you accidentally hot glued on, you often really do need to push the needle through, and if I didn't have a curved needle, I would have to push on the back of it, and that would really hurt, especially because I don't own any thimbles. With a curved needle, if you hold it right, you can get a lot of pressure while pushing it from the side, so it doesn't hurt your hand as much. My fingers are still very bruised, but less so than they would be if I was using a straight needle. Of course, there are a few downsides, but I'll get to those later. I'm coloring the lower eyelid black with a Sharpie just so that none of the white pokes through, and I'm making sure to get the inside almost eye line, tear line? Whatever that inner part is that won't be covered by the fur. That way it doesn't stand out too much. Here I'm cutting out the eyebrow pieces. eyebrows, they're very curved, so they need a bunch of darts, and I try to make all of my darts going behind the eye, if that makes sense. And here is where I learned a lesson about not leaving out a hot glue gun or setting fur on top of it. I had to recut out this piece because I, burned it brown? Luckily, I have tons and tons of extra fur because I eventually plan on making a full suit. And even then, I always make sure I have issues. Nope. I make sure I have extras because I know I'm going to mess up like this. A lot of the times I'll just cut out my pieces the wrong way, or at least on older projects. Here's the first look at the teeth I 3D printed. I originally just printed them and that was their support structure, but I end up later using the support structure as the top gums. And in case you're wondering, I did model the teeth myself because I can't stick to one hobby. I waited to cut out the pattern for the ear until I needed it because it would be huge. I rolled a paper towel behind it as I went, instead of cutting it all first and putting it on a paper towel later, that way it wouldn't stick to itself and be destroyed. I also flipped it around to make sure the other ear was identical, and to make sure in the places it wasn't, I cut a bit of away from the second ear. The red fur, even before anything is shaved, is longer than the rest of the fur I have just because, you can see my design. I have longer bits here. The longer fur makes it a bit easier to hide the stitches, but it's nearly impossible to see what you're doing, so it's like trade-offs, you know? I guess it would also be impossible to see what you were doing on the black one if I didn't have a white Sharpie to use. You might notice that these pieces do have steam allowance, and that is because I'm going to use the sewing machine on them. My sewing machine is a lot less precise than my hands, but it's always going to be stronger just because of how it is. This is when I remember that fur is heavy, and I was going to have very floppy ears. At the same time I ran into this problem, I was playing a bunch of this game called World of Goo, so I treated it as an engineering problem, which actually seriously helped. You can't just put supports where it's bending. You have to have something holding it up coming from something else that makes it impossible for it to bend that way, or at least not easily. There is a way that is easiest for foam to bend, and you want it to go sideways of that. It's much easier to bend your knee regularly than it is to bend it sideways, so that's basically what I'm doing here. And I'm sorry for the disgusting visual. Anyway, sewing fur is very tricky. First off, fur is very thick, and you already need a powerful machine. Second, it's generally a bad idea to have tons of loose fibers that are still slightly connected all around your moving parts and gears, and it gets jammed a lot. I'll get into how I get around that later. Right now, I am making the lining for the inside of the head. It's pretty simple, the same steps I did for all of my other pattern pieces. It's just a bit trickier to cut out, but it doesn't need to be as clean since it's all going to be on the inside, and I use a very stretchy fabric, so it's much more forgiving. It's also a bit difficult here because if you remember, I have that internal mask to keep the jaw moving, and this all has to manage to fit under that mask, which is glued to the outside, so it's a pretty tricky process. I have no idea why the camera quality got so bad right here. I don't know what these lines are. Maybe it was just the lights I had. I am very sorry for it. Anyway, for the inside of the mouth, instead of shaving down fur, I used minky. I could have used some pink fur I already had and shaved it down very far, but generally minky is a lot thinner even than shaved down fur. And also, I want to keep the shed fur in my mouth to a minimum, and minky doesn't shed. The lining material I got is very smooth, so I'm also using it to line the joints where the foam will be moving that lets the jaw move. The lining is the only fabric connecting both the jaw to the rest of the head. Every step of making this is going to limit the jaw movement more, so even though it looks nice now, it is going to be way worse by the end of this, so I take every precaution I can to make it a bit better. Despite the fact that the lining and the inside of the mouth and the outside of the mouth are all going to be sewn together eventually, I'm gluing it in first. I just will not be able to reach it or put this head on if it's already sewn together. This is where I put in the teeth, and I have a pretty unique way of doing this. Where I want a tooth, I will cut both through the fur and a bit into the foam. I then fill that hole in the foam with hot glue and shove the root of the tooth in there and hold it there till it dries. I also carefully hot glue the minky to the rest of the tooth because you cannot sew into plastic. I know, I was devastated too. I'm sorry, we'll get through this, I promise. Anyway, a fun fact about my persona, which you might not be able to see, is I have multiple rows of teeth, like a shark. They are not shark teeth, but they have multiple rows. This is because I have spent several years, up to today, not knowing what was wrong with my mouth and just dealing with tooth pain and wishing they could just fall out and I could grow new ones. Unfortunately, only in my furry dreams is that a possibility. Luckily, I have a habit of making my furry dreams a reality, but, you know, pluses and minuses. With the fur on the ears, I use a ladder stitch or an invisible stitch to stitch it up. They're the same stitch, they just have two different names. This was probably one of the most, not the most, but one of the most difficult parts of this project, just because I could not see what I was doing. You already can't see what you're doing with an invisible stitch usually, but in this case, I had so much fur in the way. You may be wondering what I'm doing with the zipper I just put on. I am ripping it out. I put it on completely incorrectly and could not fit this thing over my head. My original plan was to try again, but I ended up destroying the zipper while trying to cut it out and ended up not having a zipper at all. I could have bought a new zipper, but I really didn't want to. Finally, I can work on one of my favorite parts of my design, my mohawk. I'm tracing it out on paper towels just because I like being able to roll them out, and I'm constantly checking that it looks right and making adjustments where I need, keeping in mind that the fur is going to make everything bigger, both the head and the mohawk. I have to split the mohawk into multiple pieces, that way I can change the fur direction mid-hawk. The lines I'm making in the center, I don't plan on cutting them out. Those are there for when I sew it later to give it more of a hair shape. You'll see. I machine sew instead of hand sew the mohawk, even though the mohawk has precise details, because parts sticking out like this are more likely to get grabbed, and I didn't want it to rip. And also, I planned on filling the ends with little beans for weighted plushies to give the mohawk extra flop. That does work. Also, these beans end up seriously injuring me. Also, I do this wrong and have to undo most of my stitches because I did not understand the physics of what I was doing. Luckily, it is seemingly a quick fix, and everything goes back to normal pretty soon. This is when I realized I probably should have hand sewed it, because I cannot for the life of me get this thing turned inside out properly. There are tons of these spikes that just are not spiking out. They're all rounded and it just looks bad. I'm brushing it out, I'm cutting it. I figure it out eventually, but I don't recommend doing that again. Here, I'm re-sewing in lines to section out the hair and give it more shape and structure, and then I end up stuffing it. At the end of each little section pocket I made, I fill with those weighted beans to give the fluffiness. I shake it to the bottom, and of course I make sure it's at the bottom because I don't want to mess this up. And I sew it to one half of the back of the head. There's still one half of the back of the head I need to attach it to, and this is luckily my last step, because this is where things go very wrong. Trigger warning for eye trauma. Yeah. To put it short, my needle exploded into my eye. I was sewing through 4 layers of fur, so I had the machine working very hard and with a lot of force. And the needle slammed into one of the plastic beads that I was using to make it floppy. You may think I'm afraid of sewing machines now, but I'm not. I know what happened and I know what I did wrong. I basically shoved a needle into a rock. Of course it was going to explode. I and you do not need to worry about your needle exploding as long as there's nothing hard that you're sewing. This is also why you don't sew over pins. If you do need to sew over pins, just wear safety goggles or regular goggles or glasses so that you won't go blind. Speaking of blind, Rack's eyes! I'm painting them on this computer mesh, which is really nice. It's some sort of metal and it's really easy to see out of, but very difficult to see into. So it's basically perfect. And I'm just painting them with my regular paints. I also continue her spiral pattern into the whites of her eyes just to make it look more seamless, and also because that's her design. Now, my mohawk was very floppy, which was good, but it was a bit too floppy. And so what I did here is basically make several anchors. I would just stitch through about an inch up into the mohawk and then down into the base, maybe a centimeter away, and just pull it really tight, and I would do that on both sides to keep it secure, and then the fur would hide all of it. I glue the face on as its own piece, starting with around the eyes because that's the area that needs to be the most precise. The best way to make sure everything lines up is to start at the edges and then work inwards, but that makes it so that you can't really glue down anything on the inside because you sealed off all of your entrances. Ideally, your pattern's good enough and you trust it enough that you can trust that if you lay things out flat, it will be precise and right where you're needed, which luckily this one is. It's a bit difficult to see here, but all I'm doing is just gluing in more of her teeth. This is where I begin the very long and very tedious process of ladder stitching around the entire face to attach it to the back of the head. I also have to ladder stitch around her nostrils and gums just because, again, they need to be attached and I couldn't have sewn them beforehand. It really does take forever and it is very tedious, but it's one of the best things because it's one of the last steps you do and you just slowly watch all of the rough ends come together. It's amazing. And now I get to show off the finished head. I might in the future add like a tongue and things, but right now I'm really happy with this. For whatever reason, the footage gets like really grainy when I take it outside, so I'll have to get a better camera eventually, but right now I can't afford it because I'm spending all my money making fursuits. The mohawk is super floppy just how I want it, so it's definitely worth getting hit in the eye. The jaw doesn't move as much as I would have wanted it to, but it moves plenty enough for me to be happy. My main issue with the mask, honestly, is that the gray fur is too dark. Something about how I shaved it made it come out darker, which is unfortunate, but it's not a deal breaker, and I am, like I said, very happy. There is some stuff I added that I didn't record. The main thing is the fan that I put on the inside. It's just a computer fan, and I have a little battery. It's all Velcro in, so it's easy to like replace and makes it just safer in general. It's hard to see, but instead of using a zipper, I used snaps like for a jacket. They're not as strong, but they're plenty strong enough, and most importantly, they're really easy to remove in case something goes wrong. I'll try and show you guys the view from inside the head. I can see much more than this, but you can see even just with this, the vision's not that bad. I can see more than you can on the camera. I just have the camera farther away from the eye. But yeah, that's Rack all done. I'm super happy with how she turned out, and I hope you are too. My banana bunny from last time is still for sale, and I'm gonna try and have her available on my Etsy shop sometime soon, but you can just email me if you want her. It's not that big of a deal. Next video, I will be making paws for Rack, but I make no promises as to when that will be coming out because, as you have all learned, I am very bad at managing my time. I will try to be at Indie FurCon this September, so if you see me there, I would love to take a picture. I'll also try and make sure I got stickers to give out. Alright, that's all for now. Bye! Thank you for watching. Bye!